It's the TMZ Behind the Bar podcast with the TMZ lawyers, Jason Beckerman and Derek Kaufman.
I think that you miscalculated in a big way. It was a very risky thing to do, clearly. Therefore, Connie, you're terminated.
That, of course, was Arnold Schwarzenegger debuting his new tagline as the host of the Celebrity Apprentice. Did you catch it? Did you watch it?
I didn't see it, but I know the taglines very well.
Well,
I don't know. I've seen many of his movies, Jason.
It was a pretty predictable tagline. The producers, I guess,
Has to be you're terminated.
You wanted a synonym to replace "you're fired," and one was handed to them on a silver platter when they decided to hire Arnold as their spokesperson, a man whose signature role, I think, without doubt, is in the Terminator.
A little bit on the nose, though, don't you think?
A little
don't
bit
you
too
think
on the
you
nose.
should go with "Get to the Chopper" or "What does your daddy do"?
Right, right.
But it is it's the one to go with.
But that got us thinking, and apparently a lot of you as well. We got plenty of listener questions and many more from, I think, our TMZ colleagues. Anthony Dominic asked us specifically, how is it that they sort of got away with using this tagline, which is clearly borrowed from or stolen from the Terminator movie. Little aside facts about the Terminator movie I want to give you. But before that, I'm Jason Beckerman.
And I'm Derek Kaufman.
Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. We love having you
Happy New Year,
out
everyone.
there. Happy New Year. Behind the Bar at iTunes, of course.
Yeah. We made it through 2016. Didn't die.
Didn't die.
Which is an accomplishment.
Yeah, I know. Most people did, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's actually 62% of the world's population died in
I heard.
2016.
And I heard, you know what's weird? The first major story, there's a little bit of an aside, is Charlie Manson, who could be maybe the first celebrity death. And we had all these beloved figures from 2016. The first death of 2017 that's famous may be the most reviled figure.
That
be a
is
nice trendsetter, right?
nice
Anyway,
little
that's
term.
very relevant to our podcast. Go ahead.
Little thing about the Terminator. Written and directed by James Cameron. James Cameron's agent hated it, pushed James to drop the project, so he fired the agent, which I think is pretty cool.
That's what you do when you
That's
believe
what
in
you
your
do.
project.
Boy, that guy backed the wrong horse, huh?
Yeah. This was all pre-Titanic, too.
Right, but James Cameron, I guess desperate for money or whatever it was, desperate to get it made, sold the film to a film exec named Gail Ann Hurd for $1.
Wow.
Sold the full rights to Terminator for $1.
It's a good purchase.
On the condition that he could direct it if it ever got made. It got made. Pretty good investment by her. She actually produced. She owns all the rights to Terminator 1, so hundreds of millions of dollars there, and then produced Terminator 2 as well. So
it has to be apocryphal on a $1 investment.
Single dollar investment.
Unbelievable.
She made
better than
who knows
My
how
Big
many
Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah, who knows how many tens of millions of dollars she made in that. But good for her. She saw it and made it right. So Derek, going back to the point here, the point is the use of this term, Terminator, or you're terminated. In the Celebrity Apprentice, which is obviously borrowed from the movie featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's meant to play off of that quite clearly.
Sure.
A term that was originally created by James Cameron.
It's also just an expression to say you're terminated. You can say that when you're firing someone.
So this is sort of classic trademark law, right?
Yeah, this is trademark law. So it's different. There are three major types of intellectual property law. This is a question we get over and over
again.
And
it's really confusing. And honestly, I get tripped up from time to time when things are sort of thorny in the middle between trademarks, copyrights. Patents are a little bit different, but go ahead.
Sure, but let's break it down. So these are intellectual property. You've got real estate, which is real property. This is intellectual property, the stuff that your ideas and how we protect them. So there's three major types. We've got trademark, copyright, and patent. Trademark protects words, names, symbols that are used to distinguish goods and services out there. So stuff that lets you know that you've got Nike. You see the swoosh, you know you're at Nike. You see the golden arches, you know you're at McDonald's.
That's a trademark. So it's a mark used to designate a trade.
In commerce.
In commerce, right.
There you go. So copyright is totally different. Copyright protects your original artistic expressions, whether they be literary, music, art, your painting. Just that expression of the idea you protect with a copyright. So if you're the artist, you say, I got my song copyrighted. If you're Prince, you write the music, Little Red Corvette, that's a copyright protection. Right. And a patent is different. Patents protect inventions is I think the best way to describe a patent. It's just a limited duration protection for an invention that has some sort of unique design or unique utilities. But here we're in trademark. We don't have a copyright. We don't have a patent over these words. This is trademark territory.
Right. So trademark, as Derek said, is a word or symbol or phrase used by a seller to designate their product, distinguish them from other products. For example, Nike, Coca-Cola. These names that come to represent products we know very well are classic trademarks. Under certain circumstances, trademark protection can extend beyond words and symbols and phrases. For example, the unique shape of the Coca-Cola bottle. Just the shape of it is, in fact, has trademark protection. So the things that go beyond it.
Sometimes we call that trade dress. It's like the overall appearance of something.
So, but significant for our purposes, the more distinctive a mark is, the more able the owner is to trademark it. So, for example, words that have no meaning except in the context of that trademark, of that product, are really easily trademarkable. Zappos, right? It's not a word that exists in society. It's something created, or maybe it's somebody's name, but created to talk about one product. Kodak, Apple computer. It's a word that isn't necessarily associated with the product they're selling. It's something totally distinct. It's called the distinctive mark.
So it's highly distinctive to tell you the source of those goods. When you see the Apple logo, the little apple bitten out of it, you know you've got a quality product put out by Tim Cook's company, right?
So whereas words that just describe a product with common words, Holiday Inn, common words to describe a product, Payless Shoes, Vision Center, these are only protected if they become so associated with a particular product that they develop an exclusive right in that product. So the owners of Holiday Inn computer hotel chain, they developed that name, but until that name actually got some traction and the public at large associated it with a certain level of hotel quality, a certain hotel chain, it wouldn't have had protection. Initially, person A could have opened up Holiday Inn, and the person down the street could have said, you know what, I like that name. I'm also going to open it called Holiday Inn, because all you're doing is taking two words that mean a vacation and somewhere to stay, combining them. You don't necessarily have protections over those marks.
But they've acquired
what's called a secondary meaning, an association in the public's mind between the name and the product that is so inextricably linked that the person has obtained an exclusive right over that term in association with their product.
Got it. In my prior life, I used to represent 99 cents only store,
right,
which is the big pink 99 cents only. That is a dollar store, basically.
Right.
But they are called 99 cents only, and we used to have to fiercely protect their trademark. They looked a certain way. They are the name brand. Everything was 99.999 repeating cents.
Yep.
And so, although it's just 99 cents, there's nothing really special about that. That acquired its own trademark that was protectable, and we did it all the time.
But something like terminated is not a distinctive mark, and it is not a descriptive mark. It is what we call a generic mark. For example, the word computer. You cannot trademark a computer brand computer because it is just simply a common use word that doesn't necessarily acquire any secondary meaning. It can't. It is so common to the in everyday use that it becomes generic, and it is not trademarkable. And there are lots of reasons why the word Terminator cannot be enforced as a trademark by the people that own it, the original writer and owner of the Terminator movie. They didn't register it. They're not actually seeming to pursue it as a legal claim.
Sure.
But this is ultimately what undermines any rights that that Miss Heard, who we talked about earlier, would be able to assert vis-a-vis the celebrity Apprentice and stopping them from using this term, in that it is simply a generic term. A terminator, one who terminates, is a generic term, and although it is used in the context of a movie, it cannot be copyrighted simply because it is
not be trademarked.
Not be trademarked, sorry, thank you, because it is too generic. It is much like I'm talking into a microphone right now. I could not open the microphone company and try to trademark that because it is a generic term to describe the thing that I am using.
Now that's interesting, though. I want to think about that a little more because it is pretty generic, but the most generic of these expressions is probably Paris Hilton, right? Paris Hilton, when The Simple Life came out, used to constantly say, that's hot. And it became its own thing to such an extent that she did try to trademark it.
Yes.
Maybe these they didn't attempt to trademark You're Terminated, but she did.
Right.
And then Hallmark came along and said, well, this is a really popular thing. Let's make a birthday card. So they made a birthday card that said, Paris Hilton as a waitress with a customer. She puts a plate of food and she says, you'll want to be careful with that. It's hot. And he says, what's hot? And she says, that's hot.
Right.
So she sued Hallmark.
She did, and she got past the first level of court scrutiny. They said, well, we're going to let this case go on to see what happens, at which point the case settled.
Yeah, it gives you some leverage to settle.
Right.
If you're saying it's going to be expensive now.
I think ultimately she would have lost, but there's one other issue that Paris Hilton raised, which I think was at the crux. She raised a right of publicity claim, not just a trademark claim against Hallmark. She said, look, this is my image, my personal image. It's a different situation when you have a company that's trying to protect a trademark versus an individual who's trying to protect their image. And she felt that they were trading off of her image in her publicity rights over herself as opposed to just the words that she used. Also, context is important here, right? Because that's hot, unlike Terminator, which can describe anyone who terminates anything,
Sure.
right? As Arnold Schwarzenegger is now terminating contestants off Celebrity Apprentice, he also, in the movie, terminated the good guys, I guess, in Terminator 1. He was a bad guy, so he terminated the good guys. So these are just describing the act of terminating something. Whereas that's hot was used to describe that which was zeitgeisty or cool or
Sure.
awesome, and it's used out of context. So at that point, I think it goes beyond the descriptive and gets beyond the generic and gets more into the descriptive. And does it have a secondary meaning that's associated with Paris, which is what she alleged in the complaint, that this thing she had derived some sort of secondary meaning over this, and that the rights to it rested with her. But I think ultimately she would have lost that claim.
I think you're probably right. I think part of it, the context really matters. I think what also matters is Paris Hilton was actively using the trademark. Maybe it wasn't going to be effective and she would have ultimately lost, but I think when that term became successful, she was plastering it on T-shirts, on mugs. That's hot.
There's a direct connection between That's Hot and Paris Hilton at the time.
A direct connection. And You're Terminated. It's an older movie. I'm not even sure exactly the locution of the expression in the movie. It's not like Hasta La Vista, which was directly in the movie. Did he say You're Terminated all the time?
You just brought up something interesting. I don't think that phrase is ever used in that movie.
I don't think
the
so
movie
either.
was called Terminator. He uses You're Terminated in Celebrity Apprentice. I mentioned that there were lots of reasons why this trademark application would fail. This trademark claim would fail from misheard against the Celebrity Apprentice. And the one we talked about was the lack of distinctiveness in the trademark itself. But there are other reasons. She never, applied for a trademark that we could find in the term, number one. And number two, it was, it wasn't.
It may not have been the exact line.
And therefore you lose a lot of your trademark.
And Hasta La Vista, baby, would be the exact line, although Hasta La Vista is something that's said in Hispanic countries all the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it literally means until then, see you later,
Right.
Hasta La Vista, baby.
Hasta La Vista, baby. And also it's now that line is now part of the American vernacular as well, based on the movie, but nevertheless it has become sort of part of what we say in everyday life when like dads are trying to be cheesy.
Yeah, you can really spiral out. I mean, Cowabunga became a big thing when the Ninja Turtles were around, and Ay Caramba and all that kind of stuff. So I thought what was interesting before we leave trademark was...
I think he said it.
What happened?
I think he said it. I think
He said, You're terminated. Oh, look at Parker, back from vacation and chiming in. He said, You're terminated?
You are terminated. Let me turn the volume up on this.
Who actually invited Parker to this room? We were on a roll there. And
I believe you were very clearly saying he didn't say it.
I believe that we don't let the facts get in the way of a good story,
Yeah, he
and
said
we
it.
were doing just fine with that.
So he
Parker.
said, You are terminated.
You are terminated.
Which is fine. I don't think it was the catchphrase of the movie. It didn't acquire the same distinctiveness as Hasta La Vista.
Whatever.
But
I still don't believe Parker.
before we leave trademark, though, I wanted to talk about interesting, separate from copyright and patent, which are these types of protections that you have and you seek, and they're maybe of limited duration, but you have them. Trademarks are kind of malleable. You can lose a trademark from, I think is interesting, from both overusage or underusage.
Right.
And I'll explain. Overusage is if the term becomes so popular that it loses its distinctiveness.
Yes.
And this has happened many times famously with aspirin, cellophane, elevator. These
Right.
were all trademark terms
Right.
that became so common, it worked so well that they lost the trademark because now it's just the term used to describe that thing.
I love these. I absolutely
They're
love
the
them. I'm
best.
so glad you brought this up. Aspirin was it was called.
It was Bayer.
It was Bayer buffered analgesic,
That's
right?
And they said, you know what sounds good? Aspirin.
Aspirin, right.
And now you buy aspirin, you can buy it in the 99-cent store. Bayer has no protection over aspirin.
So I know we
anymore.
also want to talk about Blac Chyna and Rob
Yes.
Kardashian because they had a recent trademark dispute between the Kardashian family and Blac Chyna, where I think Blac Chyna tried to trademark the term Blac Chyna Kardashian.
No, she tried to trademark the term. I'll give you.
Yeah.
I'll give you the idea. So in May 2016, she registered the trademark for Angela Renee Kardashian,
That's
which
her
is her
original name.
real name with Rob Kardashian's last name. Obviously feeling like she was going to marry him. She was bearing his child. She was looking forward to using that name in entertainment and social media, which is the province of the Kardashians. Right. So that's May 2016. In December 2016, while that trademark has been filed, it has to go through a process. Has to be approved. Someone filed an opposition. Who do you think did it, Jason?
I'm going to guess Chris.
It was Kim, Khloe, and Kourtney. The
damn.
three Ks came out to oppose the trademark, claiming it would damage their reputation and goodwill. Now, This sounds nasty because we've always thought that they don't really accept her as part of the clan. She's not in. And it really sounded kind of nasty, but this is kind of business. They've invested a lot of money in making the Kardashian name and that brand very sort of high-end luxury, and they don't think that Black China necessarily fits that brand. Now what happened?
We disputed this in the newsroom floor because Siobhan, I believe, very strongly made the point, hey, it's her name. And why can't she it may become her name, but once it's her name, why she should be able to use that name regardless of the fact other people are already in the space.
So this is the fascinating part. So if they get married, she legally changes her name. She will actually be Angela Renee Kardashian.
Yes.
What do they do then? Still, Blac Chyna has some problems.
Yeah.
She doesn't have she has problems because that's not how trademark works. You don't have an absolute sort of inalienable right to use your own name as a trademark. That's just not how it works. Actually, under U.S. trademark law, a mark which is primarily a surname, is how they describe it, cannot be protected as a trademark unless you prove that it has acquired distinctiveness.
Right.
And she hasn't proved that. She's just coattailing it, right? I mean, she's clearly trying to get into the Kardashian clan. Her name is not distinctive.
Whereas theirs is,
theirs
right?
is hugely distinctive.
Yeah, right.
And so the surnames, unless they're rare, if you have a really strange last name like Gobbledygook or something, maybe you can kind of trademark a very rare name. But Kardashian has acquired its meaning through Kim Kardashian and her family, and you can't just acquire the name through marriage and get into that clan. So they actually have the better of the argument under U.S. trademark law.
They really do.
Fascinating.
And the analogy we brought up on the newsroom floor that day when Siobhan brought it up is if Siobhan were to marry Harrison Ford and become Siobhan Ford, she couldn't all of a sudden start up the Ford Motor Company and simply say, hey, it's my name, because there's somebody in that space, much like the Kardashians in the entertainment space, and they have trademarked that, both Ford Motor Company and the Kardashian family has trademarked that, and it has become distinctive and rests with them within that space.
That's right. Now, I think the big problem she had was she wanted to use it for entertainment and social media. That is the province of the Kardashians. If Angela Renee Kardashian wanted to open up a restaurant where they're not as prominent, I think she might have a way. I think if John McDonald wanted to start McDonald's lawn equipment, where McDonald's doesn't dwell, they have restaurants with hamburgers, I don't think he'd have a problem saying McDonald's lawn equipment.
I agree with you entirely. I think it's quite possible, by the way, the Kardashians do have the trademark in the restaurant field, but let's say they wanted to open, she wanted to open Kardashian furniture store. There's nothing wrong with that.
They may have that too. They may have
everything. Let's say Kardashian, whatever they don't, whatever space they're not in. And by the way, you can't just apply and claim yourself in that space. You actually have to be engaged in commerce in a particular space. So if Blac Chyna wanted to have the Kardashian name in the context of furniture, and let's say the Kardashians aren't there, she could absolutely do that, and there's no way the Kardashian family could get in. And as a matter of fact, once Blac Chyna Kardashian was in there with the Kardashian name, they would be precluded from getting into that space because they'd be second in time into that space.
That's right. And it's interesting. This is not just an abstract issue. This happens all the time. That you need to register your trademark for use in particular areas. Mott's is a very famous company.
Oh,
Mott's
the
apple
applesauce?
juice. Right.
Apple
Mott's
juice,
applesauce and apple juice. Well, they were founded in 1842. It obviously is synonymous with applesauce and apple juice. You still see it on the store shelves. They lost their bid to register the mark for baby food because they said Mott's is not synonymous with baby food. You don't automatically get to just expand into baby food just because it's soft, like applesauce.
Was there a Mott's out there already?
And they lost. The U.S. Trademark Appeal Board said just because you have a mark in one area, baby food's entirely distinct from apple juice and applesauce. They may have similar textures, applesauce and baby food, but you don't get your trademark automatically in the baby food realm.
I think that's
I thought that was fascinating.
Ridiculous. I think anybody who creates applesauce should automatically have apple purees for baby food. I'm just going to say.
Hey, listen, maybe you should go call Mott's and represent them in the appeal. This was the Board of Appeal. Now, I think subsequently there are ways to sort of get into this area and acquire distinctiveness and then reapply for the trademark, but they wanted to jump the gun and say, we're Mott's.
We're
we
already in the baby food area, and
Exactly.
the USPTO, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, said, no, you have to actually go through the process and get there the right way.
Right, so we'll see where the Blac Chyna Kardashian sort of
I think you were right the first time.
but fascinating issues, right?
I love
it. It's
it.
pretty interesting. So I think we've turned them all over. What about some mail time?
Okay.
Parker, we got mail time today?
Yes, we do have mail
sleeping
time.
over there?
No,
catch you?
I just had to reach it. I just want to say that it was a quote from Terminator 3.
Oh, Parker.
So,
I demand a retraction.
Derek,
Terminator 3 didn't count.
As
1 and 2
As
count.
between us and Parker, who was right?
Oh my God, it's
were.
not even close.
We were. And who was wrong?
I think we were so right that he's fired.
I think so, too.
Yeah, okay.
But not until you have to
But
read
first,
the mail
read some
time.
mail.
All right, first up, remember to write in your questions and comments to Behind the Bar.
How could he just
3.
jump it? And by the way, he said it was such, like, at first, I think, and then he started talking smack about it.
Incredulous doesn't say enough for how. Like,
You were so definitively saying it never happened. All right.
I looked it up beforehand.
Behind the bar at TMZ.com. Write your questions in. First one up is from Rain Mayhem. He's talking about the Joe Mixon fight video.
Yes.
And he says, okay, she hit him first. Why wasn't she charged with the same crime that he was?
She could have been. Absolutely. Absolutely could have been. She wasn't based on prosecutorial discretion, which is about 95% of all cases are not, possibly prosecuted cases are not prosecuted because prosecutors don't feel it's necessary in the public interest. The fact is that she didn't do any damage to him, and it's.
But you know, the damage doesn't matter as much for criminal prosecution.
It doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
But I mean,
look,
the argument I would make is that what public good is served by prosecuting her for pushing him in the chest? Now, there's a rebuttal to that, you know, that she was physically aggressive with somebody. She could have been prosecuted, but just she wasn't. Frankly, we all know why, because he hurt her and she didn't hurt him.
I think that's why. I mean, look, this was a clear case, though. She wasn't in physical danger. They were having a verbal altercation, and she did strike the first blow. She pushed, and then she, you know, unleashed some hands on him. Yeah. I think it's a pretty clear case that she assaulted him, but you're right. The discretion is no harm, no foul kind of
The irony of Rain Man asking an excellent, succinct question.
No, I thought it was Rain Mayhem.
There's Rain space like Mayhem, M-A.
Rain Maim.
Oh, I
kind
know
of
what
like
that
to
means.
maim an individual. I
take
like
back
the
my
name.
irony
It
point.
sounds vaguely threatening.
It is a YouTube name, so.
All right, go ahead. Who's the next one?
Next one, last one's from Emily from San Jose.
Oh, Emily, we love
Have
Emily.
we had Emily before?
We love
Emily's
Emily.
got the best questions. Go ahead, Emily.
We get lots of people writing in, but Emily gets on because she asked the best, most thoughtful questions.
She really does, and she opens with flattery,
Yeah.
which is the way into our heart. So go ahead, Emily. What do you have to say this time?
On last week's episode, you discussed an unspoken contract between the casino and the player where the player inherently understands that the odds are against him or her.
Yep.
Couldn't the cheater in this particular case argue that the casino broke this contract's underlying assumption that all parties play by the rules by producing misprinted cards?
There's two things I don't like about Parker. One is he's wrong about stuff, and two is that he does not edit questions for length.
He did.
I cut this one
Oh
down.
my goodness.
So
He
much.
edited. It's pretty compound. This is not the type of question you ask in a deposition. It's very hard to answer a compound question, but on mail time, it's fine.
Emily had a lot to say, and then the last part of that is, can the player now do what he or she judges appropriate to bring the odds back down to their original levels?
Wow. So the gist is she's turned it around. She said that the casino may have cheated the individual by using misprinted cards, let's call it, that have different edges that can be sorted. And to balance the playing field, the player cheated. Because I think what Emily is saying is that the house could use the edge sorting to its advantage, potentially, to sort the cards in a way that favors the house. If the player can do it, then perhaps the house can. I'm not sure exactly the nuances of the rules of Baccarat and whether it's possible, because dealers can do different things than players. In blackjack, certainly.
But dealers in all of these games, there's no discretion placed in dealers at all. Based on the cards they have, they are compelled or forbidden to take another card.
Right, like in blackjack.
So
hit on certain things.
You know, could they rig the deck in some way? Yes, but I don't think it would be through edge sorting. They could certainly, you know, pre-stack the deck,
Load it in some way.
Load it
that
in
they're
some
dealt
ways.
the best card.
Exactly, they could do it that way. But I don't think it would be through edge sorting because, again, there's no human decision making to be made at all in any of these card games because you simply can't have. I mean, players would be up in arms if dealers made decisions that harmed them or. You know, and plus it would be ripe for corruption as well.
Right, and I want to think about this contract idea that the court used. Do you buy that there's this implicit contract between the player and the house when they walk in? It's we win, you lose sort of contract, or do you think what Ben Mesrick said, the contract actually goes the other way? They're sort of saying, come in, you can win. To me, one's puffery. One is salesmanship, and one is an actual contract.
The actual I'm not sure there's a contract built either way, but if I had to go with one of them being a contract, I would say that it is the house has the advantage coming in, and anything you do to put the advantage in your favor breaches that contract to the extent it exists. But I don't think it exists at all. The more I've thought about this, the more I really do think that if a player can somehow, without using any artifice or other diversions or deceptions, can turn the odds in their favor, they're just doing what all of us should do, which is to practice and be the best players we can be.
This is the difference between you and I. I'm a law and order kind of guy, and you're an anarchist.
Oh, I didn't realize that I was until this moment.
Well, I've just labeled you. So. All right, I think that's it for us.
That is it for mail time.
Thanks, everybody. Remember, iTunes, subscribe. It helps a ton. Please do it. See you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching. If you want more nerdy deep dives into the legal side of celebrity news, hit our subscribe button right here.
And check out our previous episodes over here.